What if the real reason you feel stuck isn't because life is unfair, but because deep down, you already know what it's going to take to change it, and you're not sure you're willing to do it, not because you're lazy, not because you're incapable, but because the truth about real progress is uncomfortable. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone succeed and thought, yeah, but they probably had help? Or maybe, they got lucky. Or the classic one, they're just naturally talented. Be honest for a second. Does that thought sound familiar? Because here's the strange thing about the human mind. We don't dislike success. We dislike the brutal amount of work hiding behind it. And that's the part most people never talk about. The late nights when nobody's watching. The quiet mornings when motivation is nowhere to be found. The long stretches where nothing seems to be improving. And yet, you keep going anyway. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Most people don't fail because they can't succeed. They fail because they underestimate how long the work actually takes. At the beginning, everything feels exciting. A new goal, a new habit, a fresh start. You feel energized, focused, almost unstoppable, for about 2 weeks. Then reality shows up. The work gets repetitive, the progress slows down, and the excitement quietly disappears. Suddenly the dream feels heavier, harder, less glamorous. And that's the exact moment most people quit. Not dramatically, quietly. They stop waking up early. They stop pushing themselves. They stop doing the things that made the goal possible in the first place. And life slowly drifts back to normal. But this is where the story becomes interesting, because a small group of people experience that same moment and respond differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this so hard?" they ask something else. "Did I expect this to be easy?" That tiny shift in thinking changes everything, because once you accept that the work will be brutal, you stop being surprised by difficulty. And when difficulty stops surprising you, it stops discouraging you. Now think about that for a second. Most people expect motivation to carry them forward. But motivation is fragile. It fades. It disappears. Some days it doesn't even show up. And that's where the real difference between dreamers and builders appears. Builders keep moving even when motivation disappears. Not because they feel inspired, but because they understand something simple. Work is the price of progress, and the price is rarely negotiable. Now here's a strange confession. A lot of people secretly hope there's a shortcut, a secret formula, a hack, something that allows them to skip the brutal part. And if we're honest, we've all thought that at some point. I used to think the same thing. I used to believe successful people had some hidden advantage, some secret knowledge the rest of us didn't know. But the more you study real success stories, the more uncomfortable the truth becomes. The secret is almost always the same. They simply worked longer than most people were willing to. Now wait, because this next part might sound harsh, but it's also freeing. Hard work isn't special. It isn't glamorous. It isn't even particularly exciting most of the time. It's repetitive, boring, slow, sometimes painfully slow. And yet, it works. Over and over again. Which leads to a strange question. If the formula is so simple, why do so few people follow it? Why do we keep choosing comfort, even when we know where it leads? Think about that for a moment. Seriously. Why does the brain resist effort so strongly? Why does it talk us out of the very actions that could change our lives? We'll get to that. Because understanding that answer might be the most important turning point in this entire journey. But first, something else needs to happen. Before anyone commits to brutal work, they reach a moment, a quiet realization. A moment where the current path suddenly feels unbearable. Not dramatic, just honest. The kind of moment where you sit alone and think, I can't keep living like this. And when that moment arrives, everything begins to shift. That moment usually doesn't look dramatic. No music, no sudden breakthrough. Just you, sitting with a thought that refuses to leave. I can't keep doing this. Maybe it happens late at night, maybe during a long drive, or maybe in the middle of a random Tuesday when nothing seems particularly wrong, and yet something inside you feels off. You look at your life and realize something uncomfortable. You're busy, but not progressing. You're tired, but not fulfilled. And suddenly a strange question appears. If I keep living exactly like this, where will I be in 5 years? Now pause for a second. Don't rush past that question. Where would you actually be? Same routines, same habits, same excuses, same quiet frustration that something should be different, but somehow never changes. Be honest. Does that thought feel a little too familiar? Because this is the moment most personal transformations begin, not with excitement, with discomfort. Now here's the strange thing about discomfort. Your brain will immediately try to escape it. It'll suggest something easy. Distraction, scrolling, a new show, another plan to start tomorrow. And tomorrow turns into next week, then next month, and eventually another year disappears. But occasionally something different happens. Instead of escaping the discomfort, you sit with it. And that's when the real realization hits. You're not actually stuck. You're avoiding the cost of change. And once you see that, it's impossible to unsee, because every meaningful change in life has a price. Learning a skill, building a career, transforming your health, creating something meaningful, every single one requires something most people try to avoid. Sustained effort. Not bursts of motivation, not occasional productivity, sustained effort. The kind that shows up on the days when you don't feel like it. And that's where the resistance begins, because the brain loves comfort. Comfort is predictable. Comfort feels safe. But comfort also keeps life exactly the same. Now here's a thought most people avoid. Your current life is perfectly designed by your habits, not your intentions, not your goals, your habits. Think about that for a second. The small things you do every day, the decisions nobody sees, the hours spent scrolling instead of building, the moments where you choose easy instead of necessary, those tiny choices quietly shape your entire future. And most people never notice it happening until years pass, and suddenly they wonder where the time went. Now here's where things get interesting, because once you see this pattern, a strange feeling appears. Responsibility. Not guilt, responsibility. You start realizing something powerful. If your habits built your current life, they can also rebuild it. But here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Rebuilding takes longer than destroying. Much longer. One bad decision can ruin a day, but building a strong life takes months, sometimes years. And this is where most people hesitate. They want the result, but the timeline feels overwhelming. So the brain whispers something dangerous. What if it's not worth it? What if you try and nothing changes? What if you fail anyway? Let me ask you something. Have you ever had that exact thought? The quiet fear that all the effort might not pay off? That fear is more common than people admit. In fact, it's one of the biggest reasons people never commit to difficult goals. Not laziness, uncertainty. Because when success isn't guaranteed, effort feels risky. But here's the paradox nobody talks about. Avoiding effort doesn't eliminate risk. It guarantees stagnation, and stagnation has its own cost. Years of unrealized potential, dreams that slowly fade, a life that feels smaller than it could have been. Now wait, because this next realization changes everything. The people who accomplish extraordinary things aren't fearless.
They feel the same doubts, the same hesitation, the same voice asking, "What if this doesn't work?" The difference is simple. They act anyway, not recklessly, but consistently. They stop asking, "Will this definitely succeed?" and start asking something far more useful. Is this worth trying? That small shift in thinking unlocks something powerful, because suddenly the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Now think about how different that feels. You're not trying to guarantee success, you're simply choosing movement over stagnation. And strangely enough, that mindset makes hard work easier to sustain. But wait, because the next part of this journey is where most people face their biggest internal battle. It's the moment when enthusiasm disappears and discipline has to take over.
Enthusiasm is loud. Discipline is quiet. And most people never notice the moment one replaces the other. At the beginning of any goal, everything feels exciting. You imagine the future version of yourself, stronger, more successful, more confident. You picture the results, the transformation, the life you're moving toward. And for a while, that image fuels you. You wake up earlier, you work harder, you push through resistance. But then something subtle happens. The novelty disappears. The work becomes routine, and the brain starts asking a new question. Is this really worth it? Now this is where things get real, because motivation rarely survives routine. Once the excitement fades, all that remains is the work itself, the quiet, repetitive actions that slowly build progress. And that's the exact moment most people start negotiating with themselves. Maybe I'll skip today. I'll do it tomorrow. I deserve a break. And once those small negotiations begin, discipline slowly disappears. But here's the part that nobody warns you about. Skipping once feels harmless, but the brain learns quickly. The moment you break your commitment, your brain remembers that escape. Next time the work feels difficult, it suggests the same solution. Avoid it, delay it, postpone it. And suddenly the habit you were building starts to crumble, not dramatically, gradually. This is the silent danger of inconsistency. It doesn't destroy progress overnight, it erodes it slowly until the momentum disappears. Now pause for a second. Have you ever started something with excitement, only to watch it slowly fade away? A new routine, a project, a goal that once felt important, and somehow it just stopped. If that's happened to you, you're not alone. In fact, this is one of the most universal human experiences. But the reason it happens might surprise you. Most people rely on motivation to maintain discipline, but motivation was never designed to last. It's temporary, emotional, unpredictable. Discipline, on the other hand, is different. Discipline is built through identity. Let me explain. When someone says, "I'm trying to work harder," their brain hears something temporary, optional, negotiable. But when someone believes, "I'm the kind of person who does hard things," everything changes. Because now the behavior isn't just a task, it's part of who they are. And the human brain protects identity more strongly than goals. Think about that for a moment. People break goals all the time, but breaking identity feels uncomfortable, almost wrong. That's why small identity shifts can transform behavior. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" the question becomes, "What would someone like me do?" Someone who takes their future seriously, someone who finishes what they start, someone who refuses to live below their potential. And once that identity begins forming, something powerful happens. The work stops feeling optional. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because once you begin showing up consistently,
Even when you don't feel like it, you start noticing something unexpected. Confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that builds slowly. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, something changes internally. You begin trusting yourself. And that trust becomes fuel. Suddenly the work doesn't feel like punishment anymore. It feels like proof. Proof that you're capable of doing difficult things. Proof that you're no longer controlled by temporary emotions. Proof that your future is being shaped by your actions. And strangely enough, this is where hard work starts feeling different. Not easier, but meaningful. Because now the struggle isn't pointless, it's progress. But wait, because there's a stage in this journey that catches almost everyone off guard. A moment when things actually get harder, right before they start getting better. And most people mistake that moment for failure.
There's a moment in every long journey where progress becomes invisible. You're still working, still showing up, still doing the hard things you promised yourself you'd do. But the results, they don't seem to be there yet. This is the phase almost nobody talks about. The long stretch where effort feels real, but progress feels unclear. You wake up early. You practice, you study, you build, day after day. And sometimes your brain quietly whispers something dangerous. Is this even working? Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people quit in this phase, not because they're incapable, but because humans are wired to expect feedback. We want signs, proof that our effort is moving the needle. When that proof doesn't appear quickly, the brain assumes something is wrong, and suddenly the old thoughts return. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should just go back to what's comfortable. Sound familiar? This is the exact moment where the difference between average and extraordinary begins to appear. Because the people who eventually succeed experience the same doubt, the same uncertainty, the same frustrating silence between effort and reward. But instead of interpreting that silence as failure, they interpret it differently. They see it as the price of progress. Now wait, because this next realization changes everything. Progress in real life rarely happens in a straight line. It happens in bursts, long periods of invisible effort followed by sudden breakthroughs. Think about learning any difficult skill. For weeks, it feels like nothing is improving. Then suddenly, something clicks. Your brain finally connects the pieces, and what once felt impossible now feels natural. Success works the same way. The effort compounds quietly, invisible to everyone, sometimes even invisible to you, until one day something shifts. An opportunity appears. A skill suddenly works. A project finally gains traction. And from the outside, people say something interesting. Wow, that happened so fast. But you know the truth. It wasn't fast. It was built on months, sometimes years, of effort nobody saw. And this is why hard work is so brutally effective. Because most people quit long before the compounding begins. They expect immediate rewards, but the real rewards are delayed. And once you understand that delay, something changes inside you. You stop chasing quick validation. You start trusting the process. Now imagine the person you become after months of consistent effort. You've built habits. You've developed discipline. You've proven to yourself that discomfort doesn't stop you anymore. That version of you is dangerous in the best possible way, because once you stop fearing hard work, your potential expands dramatically. You start seeing challenges differently, not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow stronger. And the strange part? The work itself begins to feel lighter, not because it's easier,
but because you're no longer fighting it. You've accepted the reality that meaningful change requires effort. And once that truth becomes part of your mindset, life opens up in surprising ways. Goals that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. Problems that once scared you become puzzles you're ready to solve. And slowly, the person you used to be fades into the background. The one who waited for motivation, the one who hesitated when things got difficult, the one who doubted whether the effort was worth it. Now, you're different. Not perfect, but committed. Committed to growth. Committed to progress. Committed to becoming someone who refuses to settle for less than their potential. And that mindset changes everything. So the next time you face a difficult day, when the work feels heavy, when motivation disappears, when the results still haven't shown up, remember something important. The brutal truth about hard work isn't that it's painful.